All right. So remember way back in the first episode where we read an account of a toad man who was able to throw his cap at a door and have it unlock and open?
The Peaky Blinders guy, because
Yes, exactly.
he had his lock-picking toad bone in the rim of his hat.
Yes. And in that episode, I was pretty emphatic about wanting to learn how to do that and about that. um, I did that.
Oh shit. What kind of hat was
So
it?
it is the bandana of art that can do it.
Those who know that there's two seasons when it comes to key. There's the bandana season and there's beanie or toque season. And we're progressing into beanie season now.
Yet the day that we are recording this is the first day of Beanie season proper.
Mm-hmm. Because
Um,
you always have to have something on your head. What's a little crown of success oil on the bandana between friends? Yeah.
yeah, right. What's a little rain tied in the to the bandana knot between friends?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I love it. I love that it worked. What kind of a lock was it?
It's just normal pin tumbler lock on the
Hmm.
front door of a building that I needed very badly to get into, and then still don't have a key to that building. So just that one and many others in its area.
I'm imagining you like undoing the knot on that bandana and like positioning it at your opposite hip like a katana that you're about to like draw. And then boom, right? It just
Yeah.
it like the stream cuts and like then it like starts to slide in opposite directions with like a thin white line separating them and like blood gushes out of maybe not blood, but
Some sort of like lock grease, you
yeah,
could
I
say.
mean,
exactly.
it's a cooler image than what I had because I kind of was just thinking, he chucked a brick in there, did he?
Old reliable.
It's the
It's
It's
like
classic,
the
isn't it?
yeah. It's like that Kermit meme where he's like, it's time for the greatest like spell of all, the greatest magic spell. I ready to meet God and just pulls out a gun.
yeah. Speaking of pulling out a gun, let's get
Oh shit, right?
Be not alarmed at the frightful howls which you may hear. Its finger,
Hey, yeah.
so, and breaking and entering key.
Oh Lord, he's
hello,
breaking
hello.
and entering in
It's fine.
Minecraft.
Yeah, of course. We're just talking about magic today, right? It's
Yeah.
the Etsy disclaimer that it's a curio only, the powder that will open any door and the key that will open any lock.
For entertainment purposes. I love that I mean you're known, your reputation now, okay, like on the podcast that you're an enjoyer of urban exploration and of
That I
lock
am.
picking and of evidently magic pen testing, given the services you provide people. But it's nice to finally, I mean, what a time it is to launch such a spicy episode. This is gonna be later. We are gonna do a different one this week, but how the world presents an opportunity. Sometimes you pray to God for a swordsman and God tells you, look at your own hands.
Yeah, right. So this is kind of a lucky convergence of a lot of different topics that have been requested by patrons of the show that we're kind of catering to and also just indulging our own interests given recent events. So
Yeah.
boss fixing, as we have recently seen with the executive that one might call the chief of a certain company.
Oh God.
So this boss fix is best done by a well rod. And in lieu of this, magic will do just fine. And today we're also just, talking about how protections work more generally, pointing back to the "So You Think You Can Ward" episode. And
So 13.
and today we will be talking about how to defeat most things that we talked about in that episode.
Now don't let us catch you slipping. You better know how to defeat the defeats too, but
Mhm.
that will come again, that will come in the future. But for now, let's do a little plug, Salt, so we can head right into it.
Yeah, so remember to check us out at twitter.com/the Frightful House and patreon.com/the Frightful House. We have a bonus episode every month curated by and just for our patrons. A Discord server where we have my almanac, a monthly live occult book club where we discuss the text you're choosing and show notes for every episode and a little bit more as well on the side. Remember to give us a like, a rating, a review on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you may be listening to us. It helps fight the demiurge of the algorithm. And for this episode as well, Key's going to be taking you on a journey to teach you how to steal fire from the heavens in a Promethean act of theft. So, on that account, I'd recommend checking out our services as well. Key offers personalized coaching and magic, mediumship, sorcery for hire, readings and custom talismans, oils, tools, and the like. Singer offers bulk and feathermancy readings, and my books are closed right now, but keep an eye out for the almanac on the Patreon. And finally, you can find us on social media. Sfinger is at Dragon Cunning on Instagram, and I am at SaltCNC, and Key is at barnow.key.
But yeah, today we will indeed be doing a bit of stealing fire from heaven, perhaps posting too close to the sun in doing so. But there's a huge importance to, as we have iterated and reiterated throughout the course of this podcast, that magic works, magic is real, and it is provable and testable. Emphasis on testable.
Oh yes.
The things that we can do and claim to be able to do should do those things. So one of the prime examples of that is when you are doing a lot of protection magic for yourself and the people you care about, itself being a massively important thing. One of the most important, in my opinion, for everything that we do. We want to make sure that that shit works. And protection magic is a bit of a funny thing because it's working when you don't have anything happening. So it's one of those schools where it's like, okay, catastrophes averted are best unknown. But we will be getting at the questions of, okay, how do we know that it's working by trying to fuck with it in controlled and careful ways? And we will also be talking about maybe when we need to turn that outward away from ourselves and toward others to take a look around, see what there is to see, and maybe do a little something, something. How to overcome things that we might encounter along the way. I think there are also some add-on effects to this investigation that come up in other contexts. To perform divination is to wage a war against not knowing something. It is a
that is such a you way to put that. But you know what? Given what Salt's told us about how certain Taoist sects understand intelligence gathering, also very timely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most fun things I've seen in the Northeastern Xianjia's techniques is like the various ways you can perform an investigation and like basically calling the sect leader who will call it generals, who then sends troops, points troops at the subject of the investigation. It's like even for relatively benign things, you have these little armies of weasels going out to find out the truth. And obviously there's a lot of situations where that's necessary, right? Like we think of divination as this relatively benign process, but quite often there are obstacles in that. We've talked about that before. I think this episode's really going to help shed some light on the kind of obstacles you can expect in terms of, things like spirits that are resistant, or obscuring something, which can, be a matter of malice, it can be a matter of health and so on. I'm looking forward to this episode.
Totally. Yeah. I like that emphasis as well with like the weasels and the rat spirits being able to go out and like acquire information because who's to say it's so straightforward? What spirits you are directly petitioning. This came up in our Q&As recently for our patrons, which was who is responding to your divination request when it's not necessarily just your own spirits that you're asking to like live in your cards. Sometimes it's like the Anima Mundi is responding. Sometimes it's certain angels set over particular queries, whether it's geomancy or astrology and so on. And sometimes you have to like very much like conjure and send forth a legion of spirits that will go out and investigate the topic and get you back reliable information. But there are things that can stop them or halt them from being able to find these things. There's all kinds of things that go bump in the night that are not just you. And so
Right.
it's interesting on the topic of like magic pen testing. And this is very nerdy. I do like your vocab being very political and military for many reasons, not just the recent assassination. I was gonna say in broad
Mhm.
daylight, but it was actually with dawn, like right as it, I think it was like 6:45 or something like that. For United Healthcare's CEO was gunned down by somebody whose bullet casing said deny, defend, and depose, which is possibly a reference to J.M. Feynman's Delay, Deny, Defend book, Why Insurance Companies Don't Pay Claims and What You Can Do About It. So this is Key's take because he put in the Discord server, which you're on if you're on our Patreon, a little preview for this episode, and it was that exact book remade to say as like the subtitle, "Why Magic is the Real and You Should Get as Good at it as Possible" by Beaky. There's a lot of
Welcome.
people who've messaged me being like, "I'm actively doing magic to make sure this guy doesn't get caught."
Oh my god, yeah. This guy's becoming like a,
Active
as
folk saint.
yeah,
Mm.
the longer he remains the on the lam, as it were, the more power he will gain. So praying for.
Mm.
Um doing a lot more than praying for, but that's for another day, another time.
We'll get back to that one, folks.
Mhm.
We might need to cut this out from the episode, but I do need to ask, where were you this morning, Key?
um
Don't dox me,
so
bro.
it's a good question. I was definitely not outside of a particular hotel. Um, for the feds listening, I was many states away, but
Really are flying too close to the sun today, aren't we?
sometimes it's good. Sometimes one must fly close to learn those techniques and play with that fire that is able to overcome even the strongest fiery wall that someone might put up around their own house. Oh man. Wait.
Bicarus key.
Bickerous the way I'm arguing with people about the best way to overcome protections. Anyway.
Yes, 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 yes.
You know.
Nasty.
Nasty.
Uh, how far our little pentacle meme has come.
Yeah, it's got some traction.
Mm. And it was just a Brett Summer thing, and now it's become so much more.
Mhm. Kamala did not save us, so we must save ourselves.
Not that your politics didn't know that.
Oh man. Okay, so much like all of the episodes that I write the skeletons for, we have a couple arcs today. And one of the first ones that I would like to begin with is what we already kind of touched on at the beginning of the episode, gathering intel, how to divine in the face of resistance, and how to gain information in some more, we'll say, up close and personal ways. So one of the first things with divining, right? It is, as we said at the outset, kind of a way to wage a war against not knowing some shit. Um, And in the process of divining, especially when you are going up against people who have implemented the wards that we described in episode 13, things might be poking back. Things might be showing you shadows of what you are actually trying to see. Things might be showing you false versions of it, confirming your biases, affirming your assumptions, or completely throwing you curveballs that make you think they're real because of just how fucking weird they are. And you're like, there's no way that could just be something that is coming out of my imagination, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so I think there are a lot of components to that. Just knowing, and this might be getting a little ahead of myself, but just knowing what you are looking at when you see it and knowing what is looking back. Having a good sense and just through practice, through exposure, through encounter, through lessons your own spirits might teach you, knowing what you're up against. To get back to all that a little bit later on, one of the things as well is that when you might need to take a peek inside of someone's head, shall we say.
Mm.
One of the best things to begin to bypass is a technique that I know Sving and I talk about a lot, which is make a fat offering to the spirits and ancestors of the person you're divining about.
Yeah, yeah, bribe them. Obviously this won't always work, but you can always check in with your spirits if it would be a good idea, because sometimes this fucking works. Sometimes you just gotta give a fat offering to their ancestors and be like, step aside for a second. Let me do this.
Hmm. And just making sure that your spirits are well fed so that someone isn't doing this to you, and that
Yeah,
your spirits get a nice meal and move on with their lives.
exactly, exactly. You know, this is one of those things that's good to make sure your guys are loyal. They're not neglected. They're not feeling like you talk a big game about being a big bad magician, but then when it's time to actually clean glasses of water, you let them be murky, right?
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Just having ways that can kind of broaden the reach of your offering. Like if you have a set time that you do a very general one, be like, this is for literally all of the spirits that protect me. This is for all the spirits that guide me, known or unknown. This is, for all the spirits who might just be hanging out, who can be persuaded to be on my side. Here you go. Here's your piece. Here's your take. And of course, when that doesn't work, it's a bit of a
Nasty.
but learning how to say become the ancestor, become the spirit.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like powders and instances and things that like different traditions teach you to do to appear as their spirits. Okay, little aside, you guys know that I've been obsessed with this one movie this year called Exuma out of Korea, right?
Oh yeah.
This all of us have watched it. I've put it on to stream for all of us when it got on Shudder. And it's freaking great. It's everyone go see it right now. It's on Shudder. And it's just a great movie about necromancy, about restless spirits and dead, about shamans doing shamanizing things. It's also really interesting because three of the main characters are very like the three of us in like weirdly on point ways, like even down to one of the main characters being so like Salt in the sense of just being this very like incredibly knowledgeable traditional he's referred to as a geomancer in some of the translations. He's like a feng shui master who is like kind of late just like grumpy because of the way that like things are like capitalism has changed his art essentially. And then you
Mhm.
have Hwarim and Bongo, who are like the two shamans, right? Who are kind of like teacher and apprentice, who are definitely giving Key and I in many ways. And it's great. So at one point, Hwarim, one of the main shamans, she's trying to distract one of the spirits. I won't spoil what that spirit is. It's a freaking great twist. But what she does is she impersonates a tree deity. It's like the biggest tree on that mountain. And so
Mhm.
she goes in and she like puts a bunch of smoking herbs in there and she starts speaking to the spirit in its language. and starts telling it, pretending and impersonating the tree. Now, it can be that she's in a slight trance, so she's communing with the tree spirit, but she's also quite literally pretending to be it, right? And this is
Mhm.
buying her enough time for other things to happen. And so that's one of those things is like, if you know your shapeshifting, if you know your spirit flight, if you know how to mask yourself as a different spirit, this is a possibility to infiltrate. Especially if you're out gathering intel, on somebody whose spirits are fairly well warded. Now, of course, can they smell it on you? Yes, if you're not good enough at this. So be very
Yeah.
careful on this. This can backfire very badly. Now, like, I can't personally share the techniques for this publicly that I've been trained in, but one of my lineages teaches very heavily in witchcraft what it's like to become animals, to become other people, to enter shells and so on. So, like, but one thing that you can do, just kind of more generally, is you could create dolls, especially if you have birth times and dates, and so on, of somebody baptized at Esdem and said that I was a servitor, like fill it with your own spiritual force or have a spirit who's really good at shapeshifting, who's very mercurially in your court, become it, send it out, and have it collect some intel and send it with gifts, make sure that it's come juiced up, and then have it come back and report to you in dreams. Or report
Mhm.
into like like a bowl of water, especially a copper vessel that you then drink from, and then you have the knowledge in you afterwards.
I'm not saying I've done this. I'm saying it worked. Is if you know that you're going up against someone who has like a really specific or like really solid like planetary or stellar practice that is informed heavily by like contemporary takes on astrology and sort of like grimoire adaptation and revival, pretending to be a spirit of that particular sphere when you know that they will be calling on that sphere and those spirits, has done its thing. So
Especially if they're
for
very bad at cleanliness and spiritual
Mhm.
hygiene. This is one of the reasons why the grimoires always talk about this, is because spirits can come in impersonating, and you don't want that. Like, why do all the grimoires go into all these links of like prove you are the spirit in question? And people are sloppy with those boundaries and are sloppy with making sure that the spirits are who they say they are. Sometimes other things show up. There's an episode we did,
Mhm.
number 23, Troubleshooting Your Sorcery, another key special that goes into why sometimes you're unable to get certain data from somebody, or why you're unable to help somebody or access somebody or dominate somebody. Especially in this context, we're talking about like doing this not necessarily to other magicians, but to landlords and to in episode 38, or in this case, bosses or anyone above you, or I don't know, CEOs of prominent pharmaceutical companies that have denied your insurance claim. Um, you know, but it's just good to know that this can apply to, because every single person, magician or not, has spirits protecting them, and some people
Mhm.
have some very loaded ancestors. So this is one of those things where it's good to just you know check in on that. But also, people have all kinds of like spirits praying for them, including like the one spirit in their family that was a sorcerer who is still, whose words are still juiced up, right?
Yeah.
If they have any level of ancestral practice, including if they're like just a normal person otherwise, but they do some kind of cultural ancestral practice, like that person's probably fed.
Mhm. Has some degree of passive protection. Like
Mm,
that's bumping.
yeah.
So you know, learning how to be invited in, if you will. Um,
Okay, vampire.
um, but that does get to one of the points of how to bypass certain things is to know when to play into, know when to subvert expectations, fears, and desires. If you're trying to take a look at someone and getting kind of backed off by their spirits, cladding yourself in the thing that you know that person likes. Cover yourself in, let's say, the smell of the particular incense. Cover yourself in the aesthetics of a painting or work of art or song or something that they like. And use that to be like, hello, I am dressed and bearing and wearing all of those blessings that you were already inviting into your house.
Is this like one of those fucked up things where if you have really bad discernment and you're like very attracted to certain things in pop culture, and then the spirit shows up and it's just like, why, yes, you are the chosen one, Luke Skywalker.
Mhm.
And then they like, yes, also conveniently, the spirit court that you are nascently developing all look like your favorite anime characters. This is when parasites come in. And so if you're like up against a boss you're trying to fix and this person has like a surprising amount of juice behind them, which can happen sometimes just because of bureaucratic infrastructure too. Like sometimes like the spirits of land defend them. Not because like land spirits are on their side, because spirits ambiently in the land who are voyeuristic and are around. Like this happens a lot with authority positions like judges. I think we might have mentioned that like court case wise, there's a lot of spirits that hang out in courts because they're voyeuristic and want to see what's going on.
Mhm.
And so you do get people showing up and paying off like ambient spirits by leaving them cups of coffee on the floor, or nearby, or like little coins in places if you're at court, can do a lot to grease the wheels to be able to access fixing the judge. Now, sometimes a good judge fix just is a judge fix, you know what I mean? It's pretty straightforward, like dominating the opposing lawyer, dominating the judge, dominating the jury. We'll do a court case episode at some point because that's actually a specialty of yours, Key, when it comes
Mhm.
to the magic that you do for your clients. Like a lot of it is court case stuff. It just happened to be something that you're really good at. But I would say that it's good to know that there's a lot of ambient spirits that sometimes when it's like not clicking yet, like you're not finding a way to make it land, it's probably a good idea to check what the ambient spirits are doing because sometimes they just automatically end up bowing. Or like heeding what they see as a hierarchy or a bureaucracy going on. Salt's not kidding about the celestial bureaucracy, guys. Like there are spirits that are very absolutely respectful of what they see that translate to in the mundane world as well.
Oh yeah, and I mean, even outside of celestial bureaucracies, right? You also have terrestrial ones. Like I've done a lot of work for friends who are in prison, for example, and the hierarchies there are very, very different for what
Yeah.
we might be familiar with. But oh, those spirits, those spirits recognize them. Fucking hell.
Mm.
Um, and so when you're doing work in that kind of situation, like you have to really take in, you really have to address the nuances unique to those particular spirits as Finger's been saying. Like you have to consider the place, the goal, and I think also, the relationship of that individual. Like we're talking about court cases. Is this person prosecuting? Is he a defender? Like in that case, like as well, who is in terms of in purely legal terms, who is in the right, right? Because if they're in the right legally, we may have to subvert that because there are going to be spirits that are going to be a bit, I guess, upstanding about those kinds of things. And there may be spirits, it depends entirely on the reputation of the place, on the spirit that governs that little region. But I think in general, like this all kind of comes back to the whole focus of this episode, which is gathering that information, right? And
Mm.
using that as a means to bypass challenges and obstacles.
Yeah, absolutely. So be aware that sometimes one of the reasons why things aren't quite clicking is because there's a lot of ambient spirits filling the air that are not inherently opposed to you, but they see a hierarchy and they're cohering to it. And so if you're like working on someone, it's not just like a regular boss at like a some kind of corner store, right? This is like a someone who has an elevated position that has several steps of bureaucracy ingrained into the system. It would be good to leverage some of these spirits against them by having them usurp them. And that's where like showing, kind of dolled up can help. And also, I think that's just and there's another one to that, right, which is kind of the opposite. Which I noticed that you put it as learn to smell their fear.
Yeah, the learn to smell fear, jokingly in the notes, but kind of real. Like sometimes you just gotta skip past all this shit and not necessarily brute force your way past things, but know what will provoke a certain reaction, particularly freezing in certain people. Yeah, one of the things that when neighbors or when a particular landlord caused a lot of problems for me in the past and was, doing some legally very sketchy shit. On top of that, boost rent prices above a certain point where they were supposed to be, exploiting his very well known phobias among the community became the method. Um, One of the funnier encounters being getting the knock on my door and hearing, "Can you please make the nightmares stop?" And I'm like, no, go away."
Oh my God, it was so funny. Wait, well, how were you caught? How did I know it was you?
They knew it was me because they had seen something that I was in the act of deploying,
It's so
magic
funny.
wise.
You're
Which
you're such a bastard. Oh my God, you really do have balls of steel. Like it's just straight up just like whatever, man. Like I'm gonna fucking do it in front of you. I don't give a shit. Listen, but obviously be stealthy.
yeah.
Uh, but sometimes it's a flex. You
Sometimes your
gotta.
enemy's got daddy issues, so you roll around in their ancestors' graves and appear in their dream. Ah, son, I'm a
Well,
bit disappointed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like transforming into dogs and like barking in their windows, triggering like phobias that they didn't know they had. Well, there's lots of ways to disrupt a particular vibe. This is one of the reasons why when I told one of my mentors on witchcraft about you guys, they were like, "Oh, they could be Balkan." Because they're like, "Oh, they're doing the real shit." There's like powders that I was taught to make to put in people's walls that will cause like recurrent nightmares and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
like, have I had to deploy it yet? Thankfully, no. Is the recipe in my notebook? Absolutely. Am I aware that it works? Yes. I've seen people vomit worms over this shit. Yeah.
Mhm.
It be what it be. But that's why it's good to even for like more positives, this is obviously a bit more aggressive, a fair bit more aggressive, but like even for more positive reasons, this is a good thing to do is wait until night or wait until that person's asleep. So if you become Santa, know when they're sleeping, know when they're awake. When they're asleep, it's easier to divine, it's easier to
Mhm.
influence. There's a reason that even a lot of like African American hoodoo and work, there's an emphasis on waiting until someone's asleep for certain kinds of domination spells or
Mhm.
investigative spells. I will always uh, note that there's a technique that Conjure Lee taught at one of the Hoodoo Heritage Festivals. I think it was in 2020 that was essentially about putting a fourth pentacle of Mercury, which grants access to hidden things, right, under a skull candle.
Mhm.
And what is more hidden than a mind? And so we've mentioned this in even in our Pentacles episode. But one thing that this can do, whether it's a skull candle, whether it's anything else, or a doll, or whether you're pinning the doll on the fourth pentacle of Mercury, which you've printed out or you've drawn and put on a cork board or whatever like that, one thing that you can do is use this as a way to gain access to something that is absolutely hidden and private, which is a mind. And will it be foolproof? Not necessarily always, but will it give you a good burst of information, like the first tasting notes, like when you uncork a bottle of wine, right?
Mhm.
Like, what are the first things you're smelling? What are the first things that you notice when you take your first sip of it? What are the notes as they go down? That's kind of like what divining what someone's thinking about or what their inner nature is like. Especially if you're trying to figure out if someone's a consummate liar, if someone is inconsistent in their storytelling, as it were, if someone has talked their game up, or if they're very modest and have underplayed how good they are at certain things, or if there's a lot of decoys going around, especially if they do sorcery. But when it comes to like your average boss that you're trying to fix or CEO or whatever, this is a good thing to kind of reflect back on the way we talked about in the landlord episode, right? Which is know that there are layers upon layers of defenses that can be very literal, including like there's a reason these oral charms that I was trained in that I've taught you guys to a certain extent include like naming the crossroads, the neighborhood, the province, the state,
Mhm.
these kinds of things. But they also name like their fork, their plate, their table, their carpet, their floor, their threshold, their door. You're looking at the layers in which you can access somebody, right? And one of the easiest is through food. So that's why a lot of these oral charms refer to like let the spell go into their mouth in this way and into their stomach.
Mhm.
So even a significator card, right? Like you pull something from your tarot deck and you say this is who you are, or like your cards, and say the Jack of Spades, that's who you are. I usually use kings for people who are above me. And so I'll be like, here's the king of clubs or something like that, who has financial authority
Mhm.
over me. And then you start fixing them that way with like a Mercury Pentacle or whatever.
It's the good shit. And then kind of protection wise, even knowing that if someone is trying to divine about you, right, and they are pulling a given significator, let's say it's the man in Lenormand, making a bundle somewhere that has the man card burnt down to ash, and then you mix in a bunch of poppy seeds, licorice roots, a bunch of spiky things, broken glass, broken mirrors, etc., and just be like, okay, anyone who's trying to read on me using this as the image has to get through all this shit.
Yeah. Do that with your own profile picture that you use, like with the main selfie that you use for your business profiles. If you're gonna put a picture of yourself for like an author image or on a website where you're the employee, always make a decoy using
Mhm.
that image. Any image that I've ever posted of myself publicly has had this done to it. It's just a good move. And it's a fun little if you're willing to go through some storytelling and some salt led an episode on six fairy tales for discerning sorcerers, it was episode 41. We'll do that gimmick another time as well. But this episode included some notes on decoys as we explored them.
Mhm.
So it might be worth a listen if you're interested in that kind of magic.
And even then, it's just a fun one.
Yeah, totally. I lost my voice laughing at one point in that episode.
uh, we had a breakdown
hmm
at a certain cow.
Well, speaking of milking, I I think it's a good thing to note that you can always send spirits to go investigate. If you have a hound or dog-like spirits, you can always burn the person's name, their time of birth if you know it, if you know their birth chart, if you know their date of birth, if you know, well, even just like information about them, like John Smith who lives in here, whose address is this, or who lives in this city, who works in this place, like a fleshed out description, a printed off picture of the person, that kind of thing, that you've
Mhm.
addressed in oils and so on, uh, relating to what you want from them. So, for example, if it's domination, then you'd want someone like that. But if it's more just to find out about them, if you're just gathering intel, then something for clear sight, something for penetrating layers of the mind, something very lunar, right? Something with a lot of like, you might want to put this in a silver dish, for example, and conjure a lunar intelligence to assist you with this matter. But ultimately, you burn all this and put it under your spirit's vessel or their place where they get offerings, and you dangle it like a scent, right? Get the spirit to catch the scent and then tell them go out and hunt this person down and bring it back. Bring back to me a chunk of them, of their mind, of
Mhm.
their dreams, of their essence, something that I can analyze and know more about. Like if you're applying to jobs, this is a good thing to do, to investigate like what will the corporate culture be like? What were the culture of, if it's like a small family business, what is that going to be like? Are you gonna, sometimes those places can even be quite abusive because you end up being enthralled in a family dynamic. And that can be
Mhm.
very problematic and very harmful to your mental health in terms of like suddenly you're involved in a lot more drama than just workplace drama. And so it's good to kind of get a feel of what will that be like so you can start planning accordingly and fixing ahead of time. A motto that we have is like, given late stage capitalism, if you depend on someone else for your livelihood, fix them.
Mhm.
Just do it. Fix your landlord, fix your boss, fuck that shit.
Yeah,
And every
like
time, personally, every time I've been like, no, it's okay, they're cool, and I don't want to be a psycho, whatever, we're really fine, we'll talk about like adults. Always, at some point, they get drunk on the power difference and leverage it over me, even when I've been the ideal employee. I say this a lot to my clients. It's just a good thing to always have something. It's insurance. It's like, if we're
mhm.
good, we're both blessed and we both benefit. Just don't fuck with me and my ability to pay my rent and my ability to live my life as I see fit.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, even if they're a good person, they'll continue being a good person after you've made sure that they can't be a bad one.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, there's a lot of crazy shit going on out there with people getting drunk off power, like you were saying, and people, not being able to handle conflict or dispute. And when that power imbalance comes into play, you can have a lot of shit go wrong for you very quickly. So, knowing how to, we'll say, diminish their ability to do so, to be able to undermine those protections, be it explicitly magical or just social, societal, financial, that they have in place that prevent you from being able to do your thing. One of the easiest being induce sloth, induce distraction, induce being scattered, make the upkeep that they have to do to keep these things going just completely collapse.
It's a little shout out to that Crass Tomorrow powder. that we wrote about on the blog with Cunning Command and my take on it, and then you produced the version of it that you sold with Mohegan at Kitchen Toad for St. Expedite's Feast Day last year.
Hmm. Yeah, that it is, right? Like the ability to just drag people into the oh, if I need to reprimand my employee, I might as well do it later. Who wants to do
Mm.
that?
Yeah. That's the kind of sloth. It's like, oh, I have to write this person up for this infraction. I'll do it later, and then they forget. Or like this can be done by like, oh my God, I love using cotton as a material for this,
Mhm.
like filling their head with fluff. Like I'll stuff a skull candle with this, or I'll wrap a doll with this, and it just be like just full of fluff. Like I'll put in things that are very dreamy, like dream herbs, herbs that let you to sleep. I'll even use cannabis.
Mhm.
So just kind of like stuffing them with these things that just make them relax. Poppy seeds for confusion is always helpful. And then just getting them to mellow the fuck out and realize that like nothing matters. Like whatever, if you're pissed off at me, it doesn't matter. If you're upset with my client, it doesn't matter. Like you're not even gonna remember it. It's just not worth it. So sloth is a great one to inoculate.
Totally, yeah. In addition to those effects that we described, putting something a little bit granting of authority sounds paradoxical, but it adds this oomph that makes people think that whatever they're doing now is their idea.
Mm.
Like sometimes when I do, domination stuff for either myself or clients, let's say there's a boss being a piece of shit, and a certain change needs to come about, we'll go through the whole song and dance of inducing that change. This can be, like we mentioned earlier, skull candles with Mercury pentacles engraved on the bottom, or, the first of the moon always works well for that. If they need to come through dreams, just depending on the divination that comes up about it, or, just doing whatever else, kind of clockwork oranging the skull image, making it watch an image of what you want to happen, or speaking to it every day about what needs to occur. Sometimes you can add a little single drop of like a crown of success, or like a commanding oil or something like that. That's just like, okay, now it's yours.
Hmm.
Have the glory of thinking of this wonderful change all for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's ways to make domination magic easier.
Hmm.
And one of them is to make it feel like it's their idea, so there's like a kind of positive reinforcement loop going on.
Yeah, totally. The I think we mentioned in even the landlord episode, like, making an effigy of the landlord, and feeding it their favorite food or their favorite drink, or just, sugar, honey, sweet things whenever they do something nice to you, and then stabbing it with pins whenever they do something rude to you.
Or
Better
it
than
depends on the pins, right? Like some of them
mhm.
can be slicked in rewarding, like oils that reward, that give feelings of sweetness. And then the other ones that go in directly into like well, it's also interesting because you can like put the copper pins full of like love materia, right? Into eyes to make them like love only you, right? When it comes to that kind of
Mhm.
magic, right? The same way you can be like, boss, like you only see the good things about me. Your hands only give me wealth. Your mouth only speaks good praises of me. Your mind only thinks positive thoughts of me. You see me as your own son or daughter. You only want to ensure that I'm prospering. Like without me being comfortable, you cannot be comfortable. Without me having a good night's sleep, you cannot have a good night's sleep. Without me having an adequate life balance, you cannot. If I don't
Mhm.
prosper, you don't prosper. If I don't have money, you don't have money. Like that's one thing you can do with like pins at every part of the body. Like and so, some of those more conceptual ones, you would keep putting them in the head like in a ring, right? You're just going in spirals around the head, whether you're using a candle or a doll or something like that. So like this is another thing for since we're talking like pen testing or how do you go through protections and so on and so forth, like or even like resistance. Like if you have a boss who's very stoic and not very emotionally, compatible with you and who is working you to the bone, or you're in a situation where like you just need time off and it's very hard for you to schedule it, like even like a couple hours early to go home, and that's you're missing out on offering commitments. You're not able to go out and like enjoy your city's nightlife or go and like do actual human things that are not just slaving under capitalism. Like start putting even if it's not officially like don't get tripped up by like the bureaucracy of like official ways of going about things. Like, oh, well, I can't just apply for more time off. Like, grease tools with magic and just make them not notice that you didn't show up. Like, do your work early and then make it not matter. And
Mhm.
continually, like, this is why it's good to have a continual effigy for your boss, so like a jar or something like that, just dedicated to them is like, or your supervisor, right? Like, this could be anyone who has the power over you. And just continually bathing them in these things, and, like rewarding them when it works and punishing them when it doesn't.
Sometimes doing some image magic is just good old conditioning.
Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Making people think it's their, it's their idea. It's like, well, that applies to many avenues of life, including, oh yeah, it's great that I automated everything and now I don't have to do anything else ever again. I don't have
Mhm.
to manually check anything, which is always funny when that magicians get into that habit.
Oh my god, yeah.
But that's perhaps a spicy topic for another time, or for a patron-only exclusive Q&A, in which we're a little
Mhm.
bit more unhinged than we are in the public show.
Oh yeah. We got things to say, but in the wise words of Professor Oak, there's a time and place for everything.
Oh, the Q&A is where we revealed that you used to be top 50 Pokemon Showdown player.
Oh yeah. In my myriad lives, one of which was a nerd.
Yeah, one of which. What is this thing about the Sator Square? Can you explain? Because I'm loving it. You have a note here that says that one must trip over the N twice, and the Sator Square is its weakness. So when I saw that, I was like, wait, does this are you referring to like where it says tenant, right? In
Yeah,
the Sator Square, that when you have to actually cross it twice if you're doing the Paternoster?
yeah. You have to if you are doing the paternoster, which is like one of the most common ways that people do it these days, other than just writing it down,
Hmm.
um, is that you know that the N has to be gone over twice. For those who have encountered and undone Satyr squares, you know how fucking weird they look in like the spirit vision. Like they're
Hmm.
constantly just kind of like churning and swirling and kind of pulling themselves apart and back together again. So if you start unwinding that bundle of nonsense that you run into, there is a very nice and tidy reference point around which it always orbits, and that you have to come by.
It's the N. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because we've talked a lot about like using Seder squares for many different things, including putting out fires. That's been kind of like I think people will like DM us at Instagram with like their actual attempts at doing this. And you've done like a whole thing on our Discord where you've like had control squares that have a Seder square on it that's not enchanted versus ones or like ones that are enchanted versus ones that are blank.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
the enchanted ones will put out the fire. But what's interesting too is that like if you're trying to enchant it, like the Paternoster, like the Our Father is one of the ways that commonly, right? I think even the sixth and seventh book of Moses has this method
Mhm.
to enchant a Seder square, but like to unenchant it, to break one if you see one, like it. I mean, the trick is quite literally in the axis that it spins around. I love like when you get to teach this to people, you know what I mean? Like when you have
Mhm.
coaching clients and you're teaching them how to undo wards or how to like go out of their bodies and go and like actually scry things or like go out and like shapeshift. Like I love that you teach this because it's one of the fun things of like here's a word, undo it. Like here's an enchantment, like erase it.
Yeah, it's just good things to know how to do, right? Not only for if you run into a problem and you need to overcome it, just knowing how to make yours better. Like kind of that's why we jokingly for our own notes are calling this the red team episode. Because, when you put up wards, break them and then fix how they break,
Yeah, yeah,
and then put
yeah.
it back together again, Um,
Yeah. Well, I think in the protections episode, you were saying like sometimes you'll try and physically break a charm that you've made to be powerful for
mhm.
protection and see if it works or not. And it's like, oh no, it worked great. Like it didn't break, even though a similar one did. But for those who don't know, what is a red team actually?
It's just a reference to some practices in security, both cyber security and like physical site security, where also in some like military and paramilitary stuff where this is a offshoot that will intentionally try to break up the defenses that have been put in place as a means of figuring out how they fail and how to make them better.
So quite literally pen testing.
Exactly.
Oh, what was that? You remember that YouTube channel that you showed me that was like a guy being paid just to break into buildings? Like he was like red teaming it.
Yeah. Oh man.
Like how quickly can he bypass security guards? How quickly can he like fool people into like showing up with just like a clipboard and like an orange vest and be like I have to go do this thing and they just let him go in.
Yeah. Exactly. The I'm laughing not because I'm forgetting the name of it, but because there are a couple channels I watch where people do that bullshit.
Yeah, that definitely activates your neurons.
Yeah. I'll link a bunch in the show notes.
Mhm.
But
None of
yeah,
this would work on Salt, by the way.
literally, yeah.
Got a Javert post to the Jean Valjean posting, right?
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. I love that that's your musical of choice too.
Well, I mean, he's just right. But returning to the subject at hand, yeah, I love the tech of just like breaking the protective talismans and just fucking. This isn't stuff that I tend to have too much engagement with. So like take hearing your takes with obviously having done a lot of it is it's very eye opening.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I think it plays into the kind of like clientele that he tends to have, as well as the lifestyle he lives, in which he is often urban exploring and doing fun things in Minecraft. Those who know him in person know what we're talking about. But also
No.
because we've revealed our politics pretty heavily in the Lost Stay Away episode, and obviously Key is someone who's protested a lot, and who is an ardent anti-fascist out there actively doing a lot of footwork. It's really important to stay protected.
Mhm.
Um, it's also really important to remember that sometimes you can't mess with a classic. I mean, speaking of this whole situation, Anthem Blue Cross today, I'm reading this so right now, Blue Shield reversed its decision to put a time limit on anesthesia. It will not tie payments to the length of time a patient went under anesthesia. So, I mean, if it works, it works. This is kind of like when Shinzo Abe was assassinated, and it turned out that like Japan might dissolve the Moonies Church, which was so like
Yeah.
the assassin's getting everything he wanted. So sometimes a direct approach creates a direct response in Magic and Minecraft. And so one of the
Mhm.
things about Magic is be direct.
Mhm.
Put some sigils on the bullet casings of your spells.
Listen, all I'm saying is I want those cartridge casings to make talismans out of course.
Oh, you would wear them as a necklace on like a
Yeah,
chain. I would see that so fucking good.
yeah. All I'm saying is read Peter Genderloose's The Failure of Nonviolence anyway.
I will never be over that your first recommended book in the Lost Day episode was Lundy Bancroft's Why Does He Do That? Inside like
Oh man,
the lives of like controlling and angry men, and it was just like, listen, you misogynists, like read this.
literally. I'm like, "Oh, you want to talk about why cops are such pieces of shit? Let's consider the lives of angry men."
Yeah. It's sort of the sheer percentage of them that beat their wives, right?
Mhm. Everyone go read that fucking book right now.
Pause this episode, read it, come back.
Yeah. The men who are listening, go read that fucking book right now.
God. Ugh, what a breath of fresh air you two boys are.
Oh man.
All right. Now that they've read the book, continuing with the episode, bypassing words.
Sometimes you got to go past words.
Hmm
If there's a variety of reasons, you know, Many of them very obvious. Other ones being, let's say you got to treat someone. Say someone's having some really weird spirit shit happening to them, and that spirit is throwing up protections around the person that is kind of their host.
Oh yeah, like so like you're trying to heal them, but the spirit that's causing the problem is like parasitically ingratiating themselves so much into their life that they can't actually be separated.
Precisely, yeah.
Mm.
Like when that spirit or spirits begin to defend in that way, you got to know how to get past that spirit and that person to kick that thing off of them, especially in the cases of things that might have been intentionally installed by someone else.
Mhm.
Like very fiery curses tend to be this way, especially those that run through families. Certain clever malefica, things of that nature, useful for those listeners who are not engaged in as much crazy shit, but really are focused on the art of removing malefica for healing, for doing whatever they got to do.
Mhm.
Well, something here for everyone.
Mhm.
So there are just a lot of things to think about. We'll start out with figure out what you're looking at. Like we say it over and over and over again, but develop your mediumship. Practice it always,
Mhm.
because the first part of the battle is having enough to work with that you can actually work with it. This also includes spirit flight. If you go directly, practice it to the point that you can just be in the room.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things as well is like arm yourself with the knowledge of these techniques as well. Like the whole adage of like the best healers know the worst magic because they're the ones who lift it kind of applies.
Mm.
Because same goes the other way. If you're going to do
Nasty.
things, know what protection magic you're going to run up against. If you see something in the crystal or in spirit flight or in the bowl of water that's full of ink and herbs, be like, oh, that ward is from this book, this is the conjuration, so I'm going to write it backwards, burn the ashes into it, and watch it fall apart in front of me.
Mhm.
That type of shit can be helpful because there are certainly things that are very popular these days.
Mhm.
And just generally familiarizing yourself with strategies that you would expect to run into. Be like, okay, if I have an image of this person, it's probably going to be protected. If I have, spirit flying into their house, there's probably going to be some fucking, firewall protection oil that is going to burn me. So I'm going to know to, for instance, cover myself with water beforehand. Like, if I'm like, oh, that guy has, this particular ward that is a big wall of hellfire, it's like, okay, cool. A little bit of holy water on my feet, going right on through. Not a problem.
I love the one where you like sensory deprivation tank your shit. Like one thing that I was taught by a mentor was like be in a bath. Now, her understanding of what that means is like an outdoor metal bucket that is often used for like collecting a fuck ton of milk, and you are just
Mhm.
sitting there in St. George's dew, just like moisturizing yourself in your lane, unbothered, unburdened, thriving. And that's you spirit fly from there. And this is specifically to gain access to certain spirit worlds because they're going to smell the human on you, so you have to submerge the parts of you that are human in certain kinds of herbal remedies
Mhm.
that take that smell off of you, and also like anointing yourself with honey on your lips and your tongue so you can speak sweetness to these spirits. But this also works for spirit flying as into people's minds and lives, as Keith was saying. But remember, up and down exist, right? Like drains are holes that go into the earth, go through the drain, come up their pipes. I think we're talking for like spirit flight. Like I always, when I practice spirit flight and I'm like visiting Key's apartment, I always go through his kitchen door specifically.
Mhm.
Like always. It's always the kitchen window. It's never like the front door. Just because of the layout of the building, right? The front door of the apartment faces the inner corridor, but the kitchen one faces outside, like directly
Mhm.
into the sky. So like that's a place where he's put a lot of extra protection, but because I have permission to come through at the password, his spirit bouncers let me through. They're like, come on in, ma'am, you know.
You're on the list.
Yeah, I said I on the VIP list.
Here's some cookies.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, like the importance of knowing the ecology in that way, knowing what actually has to be protected,
Mm-hmm.
you know, knowing where spirits come in, knowing where spirits go out, knowing where you come in and knowing where you come out, is also important. Leaving, whatever tools or weapons or talismans or whatever it is that you might be carrying along the way if you need to pick them up. Or, having all those balms and remedies there when you come out of your trance and have the bumps and scrapes that may or may not also be physically manifesting in your body, if you're doing it right. But yeah, think like your spirits is kind of the way that I like to pose it to clients of mine who I'm teaching this stuff to, where I'm like, okay, you see a door. Ask your spirit what they think of that door. And they're like, no problem. I'm going through the hinge anyway. It's one of those things where
Mm-hmm.
all of those clever solutions and kind of abstract spirit logic comes into play. Not to keep invoking Exuma, but a conjuration in that film where it's like, oh, if you're tired, here are some shoes. If you're thirsty, here's water. If you're hungry, here's food. And anticipating problems that the spirit has in not showing up and naming the remedy to it in advance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same goes for magical entry.
Yeah, it's also why a lot of the oral charming training that I have when I was initiated into Bainye was specifically logic puzzles or riddles, posing them to spirits. This is also a thing that happens in Exuma. So yeah, your homework is like watch the Exuma on Shudder and go read Lundy Bancroft's book. Why does he do that? And then come back. So anyway, now that you're back. Was a good 4 hours of your life, depending on how quickly you read. It's great to think about like why puzzles and riddles are a thing for spirits, right? It's like these are words, these are oral words. And there is a key, there's an access to them, right? They literally filter out people who do not understand them. And you can post them, right? So keep in mind that like one way, there's a lot of different times when like, oh, the reason the tree bends its branches and lets you up in fairy tales, like speaking of the fairy tales episode, right, was because you were able to shake its bough. You're able to free it of the fruit that was keeping it heavy, right? That kind of thing. And then it was like, oh, thank you for doing that. Like, you milked the cow that was waiting for 7 years to be milked, and it's like, oh, thank God, right? And you move forward. That kind of thing. So like paying off your land spirits in advance, making sure they grease the wheels for you and making sure that they're going to be more prone to listen to your problems over somebody else's. Because otherwise they're very like, who the fuck are you anyway? I don't give a shit that you're a magician. Like, what have you ever done for me? But logic puzzles and riddles are a huge tool of many spirits. They will pose them to you, you will pose it to them, depending on the kind of training that you have. And it's a contest. It's a way to, obviously show up. But it's also a way for you to actually immerse yourself more in their world and be aware that like there's ways that weather magic that I do, for example, has to do with posing riddles to weather spirits or answering them, which includes tricking them into thinking like, oh no, the rain is falling on Sunday when it's supposed to fall today and it's Saturday. And the way that you kind of charm them into understanding this leads them to do that on Sunday, so that the Saturday that you're living in is free of this.
It's such a cool technique. And just the ability to turn spirits around like that, quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of even the Seder square itself mirroring that tech. It's
Mm-hmm.
weird
Mm-hmm.
curling and winding is the same as the enchantments you're weaving in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing in that same thing, putting yourself in the shoes of the person, the other magician or the other spirits you're going up against, thinking in that same way, that same mode. Know that people will try to be clever.
Mm-hmm.
Know that your landlord will be like, haha, let me use my automated bullshit signature, and that way my tenants don't have my signature. And I'm like, it still works. Oh, it still works.
Oh, but it still works.
But yeah, and shit like that, right? Like a lot of the logic of protections applies, and like a very good ward is a door with a lock. But what is a door with a lock other than hinges to be removed?
Spoken like a bee key.
Speaking of a certain amount of doors with locks, as requested many a time. This is probably a good time for a little vignette on magical lockpicking.
Ooh, yay!
Yeah, and there are just a couple things here. Lockpicking itself is, of course, a good metaphor for a lot of what we're trying to do here. For those familiar with the anatomy of pin tumbler locks, step by step, one at a time, overcoming whatever is providing the point of tension until everything just, clicks into place, aligns, and you're in. For those who are unfamiliar, look at the first pentacle of the moon. Um, and this looks like the guts of a lock. As noted very nicely in Sarah Masters's book that we cited pretty extensively in the Pentacles of Solomon episode. There's some mirror here to its function of opening any door. And as we joked about at the start of the episode, there is something to that slow unwinding of tension that makes the bandana that I use the tool of choice for lockpicking magic.
Nasty.
I didn't even realize how bad that sounded until retrospect. Fuck. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you added yourself as both a lockpicker and a dom top in like episode 3 or something like that. Like it was over. It was over. No, or 4, whatever. Tom Driver. Anyway, the Queen never cry. Okay, like that's your spirits whispering to you. Your like precocious baby face. As soon as your despairing at the lock isn't coming undone, just remember Queen never cry and get the fuck back in there. God, I
Cool.
fucking love that meme. Holy shit. That manhwa is literally a female Baki.
Oh fuck, man. We never cry, indeed. Uh, I'm just staring at our notes, and that face is looking back.
Well, someone even added it in our Discord as an
Mhm.
emoji, the baby. Yeah. Locked in. But tell us more about lockpicking magic, and both for literal lockpicking and for everything else.
Yeah, so for literal lockpicking itself, a couple different strategies. If you want to be quick and dirty about it, use like a rake, use bump keys, use like a gun or something like that. Luck magic is going to genuinely play a role. Getting everything to align in that way, I find the good old combo of First of the Moon and Second Mercury, the classiques, podcast favorites, if you will, to be fantastic tools for this purpose. Sometimes I'll even, if I have time and I have privacy and I have space to do this, I will chalk them onto the door or write these multiple times in chalk until I have a powder and then blow it on the lock. Then start to work my way in. Sometimes if I'm doing like, single pin picking, take the picks, light them on fire or feed them, alcohol that's been infused with like abra camino and any sort of, you know, quote unquote road opening herb like that or luck herb. Spearmint is great for this. Sometimes wintergreen, just normal mint, anything like that. And just be like, okay, wake up a little bit, start doing your job. You are the thing that opens the lock, so start opening it. Hagstone moding, where it's like, you're the thing that makes my house not burn down, so make my house not burn down.
Mm-mm-mm.
You're the things that open the door, so open the door.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes, just on a more spell work angle, I will actually leave tension wrenches on things that are still work in progress for like clients, just as like a little symbol to myself to keep the force always on that working, even when I'm not at my altar doing more process to it.
Mm.
Like if something needs to take place over a week, that will all be left in front of it, or like a locked lock, or a lock with a key in it that isn't turned yet, as just symbols of like potential
Mm.
and driving it forward and being like, all right, keep going. You are now under tension to get this done, quite literally. And
I like that.
when it's finally done, it will either, depending on the spirit and what they need, or the working itself as it becomes more and more alive, either the relief of the the heat that I'm giving it and being like, all right, you could be not being bonked when you work, or it'll all just click into place. Then, of course, on that same note, using these as these symbolic tools that open things creates a whole lot of interesting possibilities, like using them to crack open skull candles. Just for instance, what's a little lockpick being used to cut open a wax image between friends?
That's great.
One of the other things being, if you have locks itself, like a good old padlock. Talked a little bit about the use of this in the Lost Stay Away episode with the Lost Stay Away oil that I made. Taking them as the item that impedes certain people or has impeded them, the thing that will, you know, maybe be the one from a cemetery gate, allegedly. That is like, okay, if this area is being heavily trafficked by the dead, I'm just going to go in there and keep closing that thing over and over again around the room, being like, okay, gates closed, go home, stay away. Or, using it as like a kind of consecrating it as you would an image, or even going so far as to etch an image into it itself. And then just opening it above the working. Like if you're being resisted, just be like, okay, here's the problem. It's no longer closed. Here's the road. It's now open. Any of these things. Of course, the magic of my namesake comes into play here, using skeleton keys for all the purposes described above. That applies, because what is a skeleton key if not the thing that opens every door? But yeah, lots of techniques, lots of fun little things, and even just kind of as a weird aside, this is a skill that I have found a lot of spirits across the board that I wouldn't otherwise expect appreciating the cultivation of. Just specifically, I think because it makes you think about things in the way that they do.
Yeah. It's like one of the things that I always recommend to people is ask your spirits how they do magic. Ask them, like, what is it that you're actively doing when I send you on a task? What does that look like for you? And they may not tell you in words. It may not be verbal. It could be visions. It could be feelings. It could be sensations. It could be you go on an entire winter arc and you come out of it into spring and you're like, oh, that's what that was. That was all literally a four-dimensional metaphor for what it is that I do. Like, that was the allegory.
Yeah, lots of different ways, and like just the case in point, the action of you're not able to see, but you are able to hear and feel. Solve the puzzle. Align these things. Use the feedback of the problem itself to guide you. When you push, it'll pull somewhere else. So feel that and learn how to balance and move forward through all of it. I think it's even helpful for learning how to develop recipes for a lot of different magic, knowing how to balance stuff. Where it's like, okay, this charm bag I've just assembled is, let's say nettle and poison ivy and like a bunch of these other like really irritating hot herbs. It's like, okay, that's certainly doing something, but maybe we should balance that out. How do we temper that heat and guide it, or how do we mellow it so that we can get that nourishing and iron rich effect of those other plants? It's all things to ponder. How to cook by feel, if you will, by playing with tiny metal implements.
I love it.
So yeah, one of the final things I want to talk to everyone about today is Queen Never Cry.
Is how to delay, deny, and defend.
It is. It's how to award the 3-bullet his head just did that award for excellence in healthcare insurance policy articulation.
Listen. All jokes aside, we're not here to celebrate a murder. We're not here to judge who deserves to live or die. That's the job of an AI algorithm that the insurance company designed to maximize private health does with a 90% failure rate.
Oh my fucking god, real. We're here to just post images of the claim denial stats, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
Fuck these inhuman leeches who profit off our misery, okay? And if you have one of these individuals in your life because you have a boss or you have somebody who is looming large over you, uh, be very, very judicious at protecting your family, your loved ones, your caretakers. I love that the business dealings that I've dealt with a lot of other occultists have been so beautiful in terms of like have been so beautiful in terms of sharing, in terms of mutual aid, in terms of like even when someone does bear the genuine burden of being the person in charge, whose name is on tax papers, who has to like open a front, these kinds of things, right? Like the person who quite literally is quote unquote a boss, you know what I mean? Like that person is kind and fair and is actively paying people a living wage and is like structured their business around this way. Like there are ways to do it right, but like we're talking about very inequitable power dynamic relationships with people who are not your friends, you know, who are not people that you trust, who are people who you just need to pay your rent and that's why you're into situations. So when it comes to like this ain't your mama's average, you know, boss fixing episode. This is about pen
mhm.
testing, including for good, you know, I mean, this is all for good in a sense, but like, you know, like for healing people, like Salt was mentioning earlier. And I think it's good to be aware that like this whole situation with this assassination aside, like it is really it is really about understanding that a direct approach to your own protection, to the cultivation of your sanity and mental health is essential in this crazy recession that we're living through. So
Mhm.
when it comes to anyone that might have I mean, we all can look up ways to influence somebody with magic. Like that's, I mean, these books are a dime a dozen nowadays. It's specifically how to bypass things that are making that harder and
Mhm.
not assuming that the average person is not protected, right, from these kinds of influences. Sometimes, like someone's birth chart, you know. So I don't know if you want to speak to this, but like sometimes just someone's planets or the way that someone has particular blessings or boons from birth make them notoriously difficult to influence because they have this like stubborn solar ego identification that just makes them just power through and muscle through life. And like you're like, why can't I manipulate this person magically? And it's just like they are just so in their own zone.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, I think one of the things that you really want to consider as well is like sometimes people are so lucky that when you take something away, luck just fills it back up with something else. Like,
Mm,
oh, this guy's business crashed, he's in debt now. Okay, well, he's got five new benefactors funding him. Like, fate's a bit of a strong word, maybe, but like fortune in general, when it comes to these kinds of things, can be very treacherous. But it's also something that we can consider as well, right, as practitioners, and having that information, as Finger was saying, on the chart, like on the particular strengths of a chart, on the particular weaknesses of a chart. These are all things that can be considered if one is so want to do that. Not something I do personally, really. That's part of the rules for me having some of my patrons, but it's definitely something like I'm aware of and is done very regularly and is not too tricky to kind of get a start on, really.
hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to know that what you just described as like the person who's so lucky that when like something even slightly bad happens to them, luck fills the void. That is what you should be magicking for yourself. Like enchant that to be your life. And don't stop until you get there. Like literally, there is no reason not to actively be doing everything in your power to ensure that that's where you are.
Yeah, genuinely. And it's always important to remember that, like, just because you don't have it now doesn't mean you can't have it in the future. In fact, the contrary. Like,
Hmm.
if someone else has it, know it's possible and that you can
Yeah.
get it twisted. Who'd have thunk that the assassination of a CEO would lead to such an interesting discussion about magic?
All of us.
Yes,
All
exactly.
of us. But yeah, what happens if what happens if your claim is denied? Okay, what happens if your opponent's projecting a certain force posture?
Oh
If
man.
they're a little stanced up.
Okay, so This goes back to the point of being able to know what you're looking at, kind of thinking like spirits, right? One of the ways that people will set up a lot of wards is attempting to appear a lot stronger than they are. Um, know when you're looking at shadows, know when you're looking at projections.
This
Um,
includes like non-sorcerers. This is like when it comes to stronger than they are. It's not just like a magician trying to seem like they're more powerful than they actually are. It's like, which is very common in social media.
mm,
It's usually the goofy people who are don't take themselves too seriously. I've noticed who are like you squat them and you're like, damn,
yeah,
Zam! That's some juice. I see your closet where you offer roosters. Anyway, Azalea makes up. I would I would say listen, her Mamachola pot, like her Paula one with like the pink. Anyway, the
she's
champagne.
making patois for Jack Dorsey and shit.
Literally, yeah.
Um,
Anyway. What I was gonna say was this includes like the forced posture of your boss, or, like they're
mhm.
if like it's like, oh, you're actually miserable. Like you're not making nearly as much money as you pretend to. That car, you spent every last penny you had. You had to finance that shit forwards and back.
Know when people are on a power trip. You
Hmm.
know when by this point in the episode you've read Lundy's book. Know yeah, know when people are leveraging societal class,
Hmm.
race, gender, size, physicality, all that
Hmm.
shit. Know what that is for what it is and be like, word. um,
Hmm.
I find with a lot of these people, when especially when hired to actually do things, when people are exercising that in a way that is completely unjust and they got to be, maybe brought down a peg or three,
Hmm.
is know what they're wearing as armor, know what they're projecting into the world, and be able
Hmm.
to work around it.
And it's why the first section of this episode was all about divination.
Yeah, so if you go through that process and let's say spirit fly over to this person and you see them, after pulling away whatever words by being like, oh, you have, this ancestor next to you. Here's a candle far from me, left, 3 blocks away that will pull their spirits to that place. And I'm just going to go over here, do my thing. Seeing them appearing very tall and fire coming out of their mouth and all this shit. It's like, okay, I know that you're someone who, maybe weaponizes your physicality and how loud you can be and how fucking, posting you are.
Hmm.
And so to me, that's like, okay, I'm going to put an image of this person in a mirror box that is arranged in such a way that makes them literally look smaller, like
Hmm.
using funhouse mirror shit. Um,
Yeah, this happens a lot for like, especially if you're dealing with like a lot of misogyny in the workplace,
mhm,
or if you're being targeted for your race or your gender expression, sexuality. Like if someone in your work environment is being homophobic towards you or transphobic towards you, like this is like be aware of like what is the glamour that person is projecting on a social level.
mhm,
Like they have like obviously like a real advantage in the sense that they have certain privileges, right? But like privileges themselves are also glamours that society just accepts. They're not like intrinsically any more powerful than you, and especially if you're about to juju them, you know. So even playing into a false sense of security for them, as we mentioned before, can help. But ultimately, like if you need someone to stop harassing you, if you need someone to stop harassing a friend, if you're dealing with workplace harassment, or if you're dealing with somebody who's undermining your efforts, this happens a lot to my friends who are women in tech. Like they can do anything amazingly, and then as soon as like a random guy says the same thing, like he gets the credit.
mhm.
So like this is a way to like siphon some of that particular attention that that person's getting and have it be directed at you instead. Because it
Yeah,
just like frankly just like vampirize their glamour.
yeah. The converse. If one of those words is, someone pretending to be way weaker than they are, someone who is maybe leveraging something about them to appear, pitiful, appear
Hmm.
to want to be,
Infantilized.
yeah, like self-infantilizing. If people want to help them, if people want to, take pity on them, if people are like, oh, you're such and such, let me just do that for you.
Yeah, that happens a lot with people who are like really responsibility avoidant, and so they
Mhm,
get in and they're just like, "Oh, me, I could," It happens a lot even with people who just prefer to, like scold others and then make themselves like a lot of like learned helplessness plays into this. It's like, "Oh, I can't possibly know how to do all these chores,"
mhm.
Um, And then you're just like, oh, fine, I'll do it. Like, no, don't do it. Make it work.
Mhm. Exactly, yeah. Same thing applies. Doing the magic that will make them either confront those things or will make
Mm,
people see them for what they are.
mm,
It's very much so, using all of those things that induce truth.
mm,
Give clarity of sight, clarity of mind. All of these things apply here. Start jujuing in the AoE, be like, okay, if this person's going to act like a child, then we're going to crank up the people's perception of them being a child.
mm,
uh, Maybe strip some responsibility. Just be
mm,
like, okay, you don't need to be involved.
mm,
Go have your tantrum somewhere else. You can come back when you're done.
mm,
Cranking that up,
mm.
And then even in a magic capacity, just knowing what people are hiding, or less so, not what they're hiding, but more know the feeling of when there are things looking at you that you can't see, because then you're like, something more is going on here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So divine on it.
Hmm.
What is the scry them? What is the thing that they're hiding? And if you can't scry them very well, apply some of our suggestions and see if you can break through.
Yeah. Another popular one being, let me make you think you won.
Mm,
If someone throws, being a professional occultist online, as many of our listeners are, and as we are too, we are no strangers of people throwing random bullshit. Okay, sure. Think you won. Go about your business.
yeah, yeah, that's one thing that when we were doing the method of those terms a couple years ago, Key, which there's another batch of them coming soon, so keep your eyes peeled.
Mhm.
They one of those things those spirits do is they're very good at like sniffing out like what to project, right? So it's like, oh yeah, your spirits are so much more powerful than mine, and you got through, you broke my words, you win, my life is suffering now. Like projecting that when someone divines versus projecting like the you're never going to succeed. Like depending on like what if you want to project strength or weakness, sometimes spirits will choose one or the other, depending on what will best fool another person's spirits. But ultimately, nothing is more satisfying than just being like, not only will it not work, but you will not come out unscathed. And
Mhm.
that's a good thing to project onto just ordinary workplace situations, right? In case someone's thinking of like trying to hurt your livelihood, trying to report you, trying to create something that's like slander you on the internet. Someone who's wants to potentially hurt your business in any way or give you a bad
Mhm.
review, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, okay, cool, you won. Go away. I'll keep doing my thing over here, and you do yours
Mm.
way over there.
Or alternatively, make them realize that even trying would cause more problems than it's worth for them.
Hmm. And that's kind of the thing of like, sometimes it's good to have a little shit that anyone psychic enough can see. Or even in the non-magical example, maybe it's good to pop off every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, I know that I can handle my shit. Know that I can resolve conflict in a way that's healthy, or that goes just in my favor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to handle anyone else's bullshit. And having that reputation be known that you're someone who's going to act ethically in that, then let that precede you.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, don't be the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceuticals company. Middle text.
Yeah, who made your money on the literal blood of the common man?
Hmm.
Amen.
We never cry.
Queen never cry. So true. So true, bestie. Well, thank you, Key. This was really fun. Very esoteric in the literal sense. Some interesting techniques. Play around with this stuff. Protect your own. What's a little revolutionary politics with your cup of sorcery in the morning?
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming along and indulging me in this very quintessentially key episode.
It's a very key episode, yeah. Like
Yeah,
Salt and I are just sitting here like nodding along.
just kind of what's a little late night conversation vibes about thoughts on magic, thoughts on politics, thoughts on where those intersect, how they
Hmm.
apply in the same way to the world, and most importantly, just how to think like a spirit in both those capacities.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, speaking of which, you have a good Akashic record, don't you?
Oh, yeah. My Akashic record today is, in reference to recent events, smiles. NK plus ultras do not resurrect.
That's really fucking funny, man.
I think it's a type of suggestion that might segue into your own.
Oh, mine is Sophie Hunter's cunt. I don't have to explain myself for shit for this one. Go read the lyrics. It'll make sense.
Mhm.
And then reread our book recommendation.
The literal Akashic library for a book rec.
Yeah, and we do have an Akashic Records of the Frightful House playlist on Spotify. So if you would like to go give that a gander and follow along with all the song recommendations that we have been posting over the many months that this podcast has now been running. You can also find it on withcunningcommand.com/podcast. All the episode links are there, as well as the actual Akashic Records playlist is linked at the bottom.
And join us on the Patreon. Come hang out.
Come hang out with
Uh,
us. We post some fire memes. We have some good emojis in the server, and we workshop lots of cool magic to do.
Come radical post. Come talk about good magic, good politic, and
Good fucking music.
yeah, genuinely.
Mhm. And good food. Good gym routines. We got a lot of cool little channels on Discord.
Mhm. And test group for scrying and magic of all kinds. So come participate in those projects. Test out some of the things mentioned in the episode today.
Yes, Key will give you homework.
That I will. Everyone, pick a friend, make a ward, and ask them to get in. Have them describe what they see and how they get past it. Then make another and improve.
And then go with that friend to buy tickets to the new Nosferatu movie.
Yes. It's an important part of this process.
It is, it is. Well, amazing. And what is our license to depart this time, Key?
Oh man, our license to depart for this episode is an excerpt from the fourth declaration of the Lasandon jungle as delivered by Subcomandante Insurgente Marcos.
Amazing. For those, we may have referenced this before. Was this in the do you remember if we did this in the law stay away episode, Key?
I think we did, yeah. I think we were talking about prison letters, so that might definitely have me Zapatista posting a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's amazing. There's an amazing collection of his works in English. And speaking of revolutionary politics, fucking magic. This is such a good quote. We'll have both the Spanish and the English available for the show notes for the folks on Patreon. But I will let you read the English, beautifully translated by Radio Zapatista,
Mhm.
which goes as follows.
We were born of the night. We live in the night. We will die in her. But the light will be tomorrow for others, for all those who today weep at the night, for those who have been denied the day, for those for whom death is a gift, for those who are denied life. The light will be for all of them, for everyone, everything. For us, pain and anguish, for us, the joy of rebellion, for us, a future denied, for us, the dignity of insurrection, for us, nothing.
You're 2 pennies on a Fortune 500 company's balance sheet. They don't care about you in the slightest. Get it? Twisted?